I died in warm blue water under a sky so beautiful it felt insulting. Vanessa Reed was alive because of me. That was the last fact I knew with certainty before the current pulled me beyond the rescue boat. She had gone over the stern rail of the company yacht while trying to take a photograph no one needed. She was 5 months pregnant, wearing a white linen dress and a wide straw hat that disappeared almost as soon as she hit the water. The crew threw a life ring. She missed it. People screamed. Someone cried that she was pregnant. I had open water training from years of swimming and diving, not enough to make me a professional rescuer, more than enough to make me think I could help, so I jumped. I reached her. She clawed at me hard enough to tear skin from my shoulder. I pushed the flotation cushion against her chest and told her to hold it. I kept her face above water. When the rescue tender reached us, I shoved her toward the crew first. They hauled her aboard, then a sideways current caught me. I remember one crewman reaching for me. I remember the gap widening anyway. I remember my arms becoming heavy. I remember thinking my mother would be angry that I had skipped breakfast. Then there was only water. I expected death to be the end of the story. It was not. Vanessa woke in a hospital, cried into a camera, and told the world I had pushed her overboard. She said we had argued about a promotion. She said I had resented the attention she received as a pregnant employee, she said. She remembered a hand on her back and then the ocean beneath her. She admitted I had jumped after her, but twisted that too. Maybe I panicked after what I had done, she said. Maybe I tried to save her because I knew there were witnesses. A dead woman cannot explain motive. A dead woman cannot produce the email she had already sent to Human Resources documenting project credit disputes. A dead woman cannot remind Melissa Grant that Vanessa climbed over the rail on her own. A dead woman cannot ask why a woman who claimed she had been shoved had laughed at a deckhand who told her to step back inside. My mother had to do those things for me. Margaret Carter buried her only daughter, then spent months paying attorneys to defend my name. North Star Media Group froze part of the additional death benefit it had planned to give her because Vanessa's attorney claimed my actions might have caused the incident. Eric Reed, Vanessa's husband, demanded compensation from my estate. Vanessa built an online audience around surviving an alleged attempted murder while pregnant. She used photographs from the hospital. She spoke about trauma. She spoke about betrayal. She spoke about how terrifying it was to realize a colleague had wanted her dead. She never spoke about the rail. She never spoke about the deckhand's warning. She never spoke about the photograph she wanted. Months later, a crew member found footage on an action camera. It showed Vanessa stepping over the barrier herself. It showed me several feet away. It showed the deckhand ordering her back. It showed Vanessa lifting one hand and calling for one more picture. By then my mother had sold investments to pay legal bills. My name had spent months circulating beneath headlines that paired the words hero and killer. Vanessa changed her story. She said trauma could distort memory. She said she had never intended to accuse me maliciously. Then investigators found that Eric had started researching workplace assault settlements while Vanessa was still in the hospital. They found their debts. They found the conversations about compensation. They found that Vanessa had increased an accident policy not long before the retreat and that she and Eric had discussed what an injury during a corporate trip might be worth. The whole thing had not begun as a plan to die. It had begun as a plan to create a claim, a minor fall, a dramatic pregnancy scare, a company eager to settle. That was all they thought they were arranging. The sea had not read their plan, neither had I. I gave Vanessa the one thing her scheme had never budgeted for, my life, and she still tried to charge my family for it. When I opened my eyes again, I was sitting in a North Star conference room with a retreat form in front of me, 3 days of yacht travel and a private island resort. My signature line was blank. Vanessa was 2 seats away, one hand resting protectively over her pregnancy, laughing about how many pictures she planned to take. I looked down at the form. Then I tore it in half. Chapter 1. Not going. The sound was not loud, paper tearing rarely is, but in a conference room full of people signing the same form, it made several heads turn. Nina Alvarez from Human Resources paused beside the projector screen. Jane, I folded the 2 halves once and put them beneath my notebook. I'm not going. Vanessa's laugh stopped. Across the table, Melissa Grant lifted her eyebrows. Since when? You were the one who said you wanted to snorkel. I had said that in my previous life. I had also packed reef-safe sunscreen, 2 swimsuits, a waterproof camera case, and a paperback I never finished because my body was found before the trip ended. Changed my mind, I said. Nina glanced at the form. The company already paid the deposit, but the retreat is optional. I just need you to send me a cancellation email for the record. I will. That was it. No one demanded a medical excuse. No one threatened my job. No one asked me to prove that I had a family emergency. It almost made me laugh. 4 months after my death, Strangers had debated whether I had been morally required to save Vanessa. In reality, I had not even been required to board the yacht. Vanessa leaned toward me when the meeting ended. You're serious? Yes. She wore a pale green dress that made her pregnancy obvious without looking like maternity wear. Vanessa had always been good at presentation. She could turn a quarterly results meeting into a lifestyle photograph without seeming to try. But this is the biggest team event we've had since the merger. Then you'll have enough people to celebrate without me. She smiled, but I knew the tiny flattening at the corner of her mouth. Come on, it'll be fun. You work too much. In my previous life, she had told reporters I hated her because management made allowances for her pregnancy while expecting everyone else to keep working. I met her eyes. I'll survive missing one retreat. Something flickered in her expression, then she laughed. Your loss. Yes, I thought, that was exactly what I was correcting. Back at my desk, I did not spend the afternoon staring at Vanessa or trying to catch her in a crime that had not happened yet. I protected my own life first. I emailed Nina confirming I would not attend. I copied my direct manager, Rachel Kim, and stated that I would remain available in Miami to handle the live dashboard for the Solstice Beauty account during the retreat. That project mattered for another reason. Vanessa had taken credit for it after my death. North Star sold two things, strategy and confidence. Clients paid us to make decisions look inevitable. Vanessa was excellent at confidence. I was the one who built the analysis underneath it. For Solstice, I had created the customer segmentation model, the regional sales forecast, and the campaign testing framework. Vanessa had handled client calls and presentation polish. We were supposed to share credit. In my previous life, after I died, she gradually rewrote the project history until she was described as the strategic lead. This time I uploaded the latest files to the official project archive. I sent Rachel a concise summary of ownership and dependencies. I added my notes to the client record rather than leaving them in a private folder. Nothing dramatic, no accusation, just timestamps. Rachel stopped by my desk later. You're really skipping the island. Really? I thought you loved boats. I looked at the windows. Beyond downtown Miami, the afternoon sky was bright enough to hurt. I like coming back from them. Rachel laughed. Fair, if you're staying. Can you cover the Solstice refresh while the rest of us are gone? Already planning to. You're saving me. The words hit harder than she intended. I kept my expression neutral. I'm covering a dashboard. Rachel, let's not make it heroic. She grinned and walked away. I sat very still until my hands stopped shaking. That evening, Vanessa sent me a direct message. You sure? I can ask Nina to put you back on the list, I answered. I'm sure. Have a safe trip. She sent a photograph of a white swimsuit beneath a flowing cover-up. You're going to regret missing these pictures. I stared at the message. No, Vanessa, I had already regretted being in them once. Chapter 2, Credit Where It Belonged. The next morning I arrived at North Star before Vanessa, not because I needed to beat her to anything, because I had slept badly and discovered that being alive made even insomnia feel temporarily precious. I bought coffee from the lobby cafe and sat in the quiet office reviewing 5 years of my own work. Death had clarified an uncomfortable truth. I had been too casual about credit. I thought good work spoke for itself. It did not. People spoke for work. Vanessa had understood that much better than I did. She was not incompetent. That would have made the story simpler and less believable. She was an excellent account manager. Clients liked her. She remembered spouses' names, sent thank you notes, and could sense when a vice president needed reassurance more than another chart. But she also had a habit of using we when I was present and I when I was not. I opened the North Star archive and began documenting major projects properly. Solstice Beauty, Arbor Home, Neon Athletics, the regional launch for Cinder Foods. For each, I linked model files, meeting notes, revisions, and final decks. I did not alter anything. I simply made the work visible. When Rachel arrived, she found me halfway through the Arbor archive. Are we being audited? No. Then why do you look like an auditor? Promotion review is coming up. I realized my project records are messy. That was true. She pulled a chair over. You and Vanessa are both applying for strategy director, right? Yes, you're stronger technically. She's stronger in client development. I know. Rachel studied me. You're being weirdly calm about it. I almost told her dying helped with perspective. Instead I said, I want the decision made on a clean record. Good answer. Very grown up, disturbing, but good. Vanessa appeared around 10 minutes later with Melissa and a box of pastries. For the poor souls staying behind, she announced. Melissa laughed. Jane's choosing spreadsheets over paradise. Someone has to keep the company alive while you take bikini pictures, I said. Vanessa handed me a croissant. Don't pretend you're not jealous of the croissant. Very. People laughed. The moment passed. That was important. I did not want Vanessa suspicious. There was nothing I could do about what she had not done yet anyway. I could not march into security and say, my pregnant coworker is going to climb over a yacht railing tomorrow because in another life I drowned saving her. I could only remove myself. At lunch, I called my mother. Did you remember your appointment tomorrow? I asked. Margaret sighed. Hello to you too. Hello, did you? Yes, tyrant. My mother had a cardiology follow-up that had been easy for me to neglect in the old timeline because I was going on the retreat. She was stable, but a previous rhythm issue meant she needed regular monitoring. In my first life, she attended alone. After I died, I had watched her become smaller under grief, litigation, and the humiliation of defending my name to people who had never met me. I'll take you, I said. Aren't you going to the company island? Not anymore. Why? Didn't feel like it. She was silent for a moment. You canceled a free tropical vacation because you didn't feel like it. Apparently I'm becoming mysterious, or sensible. Those boats always make me nervous. I closed my eyes. You never told me that. You never asked. Of course, my mother changed the subject and told me about a neighbor who had planted bougainvillea too close to a fence. I listened to every unnecessary detail. Alive people were allowed to waste time. It felt extravagant. Chapter 3. Boarding without me. The retreat group left on a bright Friday morning, my phone filled with photographs before I finished breakfast. Vanessa posted from the marina first, white yacht, blue water, white sunglasses, one hand under her stomach, baby's first corporate retreat. Melissa reacted with 3 heart emojis. Rachel sent a group selfie of the account team. Someone else posted a picture of the breakfast buffet. I was sitting across from my mother in a cardiology waiting room. Margaret peered at my screen. That looks expensive. It is. And you chose this instead. Try not to sound offended. She smiled. I'm honored, slightly suspicious, but honored. The appointment went well. Her medication stayed the same. The cardiologist wanted another test later in the year. Nothing urgent. In my old life I had known that result only because she texted me while I was on the yacht, had replied with a thumbs up. Now I sat beside her, asked questions, and drove her home. Ordinary choices kept feeling like stolen treasure. When I returned to North Star, the office was almost empty. A few employees who had opted out of the retreat worked quietly among entire rows of vacant desks. I opened the Solstice dashboard. A sales anomaly in 2 southeast markets gave me something useful to focus on. For several hours, I forgot about the sea. Then the retreat group sent videos from the yacht, music, champagne for people who were drinking, mocktails for Vanessa, wind snapping at loose fabric. The boat looked exactly as I remembered. My skin went cold. I put the phone face down. A little later, Rachel messaged me privately. Vanessa is making Melissa take approximately 10,000 pregnancy photos. You chose correctly. I typed back. I usually do eventually, then deleted it. I sent, have fun, stay behind the rails. Rachel replied with a laughing face. The sentence sounded like a joke to me. It was the only warning I could give without sounding insane. By late afternoon, the weather shifted slightly. Not a storm, not even rain. The wind strengthened enough to roughen the water. I knew because I checked marine conditions 3 times. Then I made myself stop. Had already chosen. The sea belonged to the people on it now. I worked through a client memo. At some point, my phone went silent. Not literally. The group chat stopped. The last image was Vanessa near the stern in the white cover-up, holding the rail with one hand while Melissa framed a photograph. Then nothing. My heartbeat became so loud I could hear it. I knew what came next. I still was not prepared when Rachel called. Jane. Her voice was wrong. I stood without realizing it. What happened? Vanessa went overboard. For 1 second, I was back in the water, her fingernails in my shoulder, salt in my mouth, the rescue boat moving toward us. Then the office returned. Are the crew responding? Yes, they threw flotation gear. The tender is out. Coast Guard has been called. Good. Rachel began crying. She's pregnant. I know. No one can get to her. I gripped the edge of my desk. Listen to the crew. Do not let anyone else jump in unless the crew tells them to. There was a sharp breath. They already told us not to. Then listen. I ended the call because Rachel needed to be present where she was, and I needed to stay where I was. I sat down. My legs were shaking. Across the office, a junior designer looked up from his headphones. Everything okay? There was an accident on the retreat. His face changed. I turned back to my screen. The Solstice numbers blurred. I did not pray for Vanessa to die. I need that understood. Even if no one ever reads this confession, I did not wish the ocean closed over her. I wished there had been a version of the world where she stayed behind the rail. I wished she had grabbed the life ring. I wished she had learned from fear without anyone dying, but I did not wish myself onto that boat, not even for 1 second. Chapter 4. the water did not care. The search lasted through sunset. North Star shut down normal operations as soon as senior leadership understood the seriousness of the situation. Nina sent a company-wide message asking employees not to speculate publicly and to direct media questions to communications. Rachel sent short updates to me when she could. Vanessa had crossed into a restricted area. A deckhand had told her to return. Melissa had been taking a photograph. A wave hit the vessel. Vanessa fell. The crew deployed flotation devices. She missed the first ring. The rescue tender launched. For several minutes, they could still see her. Then conditions and distance made tracking difficult. The Coast Guard took over the broader search. Each sentence was almost identical to my previous life until the point where I had jumped. That missing action changed everything. No second person entered the water. No one reached Vanessa before the current carried her farther away. No one transferred a flotation cushion into her arms. No exhausted swimmer remained behind when the tender turned toward the yacht. The rescue crews did everything professionals were supposed to do. The ocean did not care. My mother came to my apartment that evening because she heard about the accident on local news. You were supposed to be on that boat. She stood in my kitchen holding her purse against her chest. Yes, Jane, I'm here. She crossed the room and hugged me so hard my cheek pressed against her hair. In my previous life, she had hugged a coffin. I wrapped both arms around her. I'm here, I repeated. She cried anyway. We watched no more news that night. The next morning, the search continued. North Star arranged counselors for employees and sent the yacht passengers to hotels near the marina. Rather than forcing anyone back to work, I went to the office because sitting at home made every minute louder. Rachel called around midday. They found her hat. I closed my eyes. I'm sorry, Melissa won't stop crying. Is she with someone? Yes, good. Rachel's voice dropped. Jane, she went outside the rail. I know. How? I realized my mistake. You told me yesterday, right? Sorry. I can't think. Don't worry about it. She was silent. The crewman was yelling at her to come back. Melissa says Vanessa wanted one picture. I stared at my desk. Make sure Melissa saves everything on her phone. What? The original video, photos, messages. Don't edit them, don't post them, don't delete anything. Why? Because in my last life she hid behind the sentence I wasn't looking. Because there will be an investigation. Original files matter. Rachel exhaled. You're right. I was, this time. Truth would not wait months in the memory card of a crewman's camera. By evening, authorities shifted from active rescue toward recovery. 2 days later, Vanessa's body was found. The formal words came through company email. North Star was heartbroken to confirm the death of our colleague Vanessa Reed and her unborn child. I read the sentence once, then again. I felt no triumph, only a terrible stillness. She was dead at 29. Her child had never been part of her schemes. 2 lives ended because Vanessa believed a safety barrier was negotiable, and because, in the life before this one, I had refused to let that consequence reach her. I had paid it instead. Not this time. Chapter 5. A family needs someone to blame. Eric Reed arrived at North Star before Vanessa's memorial flowers did. He did not come alone. He brought an attorney. That was not automatically suspicious. A man whose wife had died during a company-sponsored retreat had every reason to seek legal advice. What mattered was what he asked for. Every video, every safety policy, every employee statement, every insurance policy connected to the retreat, the passenger manifest, the event planning contract, the yacht operator's safety history. He also asked for a list of employees who had cancelled attendance after initially agreeing to go. That last request reached me through Nina. Legal says we don't have to provide personal details beyond what's relevant, she told me, but your name may come up because you cancelled the day before. That's fine. She studied me. You don't seem surprised. His wife died. He's looking for explanations. You're generous. No, I remembered him standing beside Vanessa's hospital bed in my previous life, speaking to a lawyer while I was still missing at sea. I remembered the search terms investigators later found on his devices: workplace assault compensation, estate liability after employee death, whether a dead person's insurance could pay a civil settlement. Eric had begun calculating before my mother knew where my body was. This time he had no dead rescuer to accuse. He would find someone else. At the memorial, Vanessa's mother, Patricia Reed, held a framed photograph of her daughter and cried so violently 2 co-workers had to support her. Grief does not make a person innocent or guilty. Her pain was real, so was what she did with it. She spoke to a local reporter outside the church. My daughter was 5 months pregnant. Why was a pregnant woman ever allowed on such a dangerous trip? North Star had not required Vanessa to attend. In fact, Nina had sent her a separate note offering a hotel-only alternative because some Planned activities were unsuitable during pregnancy. Vanessa had replied enthusiastically that she was coming and would skip anything strenuous. I knew because I had seen the email in the retreat planning thread. Patricia continued, companies talk about protecting working mothers until something happens, then they hide behind waivers. The quote spread before lunch. By evening, posts accused North Star of forcing a pregnant employee onto a dangerous yacht. The company issued a restrained statement confirming participation had been voluntary and that an independent marine investigation was ongoing. Eric's attorney called that defensive. Patricia called it heartless. I said nothing. Then Melissa called me. They think it's my fault. Her voice was hoarse. Who? Eric, his lawyer. They asked why I didn't stop her. They asked whether I encouraged her to climb out because I was taking the picture. I leaned back in my chair. There it was, the replacement target. Did you encourage her? No, I told her the crewman was yelling. She said it would take 1 second. Do you have the video? Yes, all of it. I think so. Make 2 copies. Give one to your lawyer. Give the original to investigators if requested. Don't send edited clips to anyone. She began crying. I should have stopped her. You should have refused to take the picture. Silence. She had expected comfort. I was done confusing comfort with lies. But Vanessa was an adult. I continued. You did not put her over the rail. Keep those 2 facts separate. Melissa breathed shakily. Eric, keep saying I knew it was dangerous, then tell the truth about what you knew and what you did. Nothing more. Another pause. Why are you being nice to me? I thought about the woman she had been in my previous life, refusing to say she saw Vanessa climb over because she feared blame. I'm not being nice. I'm telling you not to repeat someone else's lie just because you're ashamed of your own mistake. She did not understand the last part. Maybe she never would, but the next morning she turned over the full video. That changed everything. Chapter 6. One picture. The clip was less than a minute long. It dismantled a week of speculation. Vanessa stood inside the passenger area, laughing into the wind while Melissa filmed. Then she moved toward the stern. A crew member noticed and called to her, "Ma'am, that area is restricted. Please stay inside the rail." Vanessa smiled toward the phone. One picture. She lifted the hem of her cover-up, stepped over, and placed one hand on the outer structure. The crewman moved toward her. The yacht rolled. Vanessa's hand slipped. She disappeared from frame. No shove, no argument, no employee pressure, no mysterious equipment failure, just a decision and a wave. The video did not make her death less sad. It made several profitable versions of it impossible. Eric's attorney immediately argued that the yacht operator had failed to physically prevent access to the area. That was a legal question for professionals. What Eric could no longer plausibly claim was that Vanessa had been standing in an ordinary passenger zone when she fell. Patricia went online and said the video proved the crew knew Vanessa was in danger and failed to act quickly enough. People argued. Marine safety experts explained that a verbal warning and immediate intervention were visible in the footage. Other passengers confirmed crew members had repeatedly reminded everyone to stay behind marked barriers as the sea became rougher. Then an old North Star planning email surfaced in the investigation. Nina had written directly to Vanessa, "Because you mentioned your pregnancy, please remember all retreat activities are optional. We can reserve you a room at the island hotel and arrange direct transfer if you prefer not to spend the full travel period aboard the yacht." Vanessa's reply, "I'm absolutely coming. I may be pregnant, but I'm not fragile. Save me a mocktail." Patricia stopped saying the company forced her onto the boat. She switched to saying the company should have protected her from herself. That argument did not travel as far. At work, the atmosphere remained heavy. Vanessa's desk had been cleared by human resources. Her framed ultrasound photograph went to Eric. Someone removed the plant she always forgot to water. I walked past the empty space every morning. There was no satisfaction in it. Revenge stories make consequences look clean from a distance. In real life, an empty desk has a coffee stain beneath the keyboard and a cardigan. No one knows whether to return to the family. Rachel caught me looking once. "You okay?" "Yes." "Promotion review is postponed." I assumed. Leadership doesn't want it to look like we're replacing her before the funeral flowers die. Reasonable. Rachel folded her arms. "You know she was competing with you." "I know. People are going to be weird when review restarts. People are always weird around promotions." "You really are impossible now." I smiled. "Now." She left shaking her head. I returned to Solstice. The client had approved the campaign shift based on my regional analysis. I documented it in the archive, one file at a time, one fact at a time, a life rebuilt the same way. Chapter 7. The story Eric wanted. Eric's public grief lasted exactly as long as grief remained useful without a villain, then he needed one. Melissa was the first candidate. He gave an interview in which he said, "Someone was filming my pregnant wife while she entered a dangerous area. I want to know whether she was encouraged to do it for content. He did not name Melissa, he did not need to. People found her social media within hours. She deleted her accounts and stayed home from work. North Star's legal department arranged counsel because her actions occurred during a company event. Melissa gave investigators her original files, including a message exchange from earlier that day. Vanessa, the stern lighting is perfect, get one where you can see the bump and the island. Melissa, Cruz says not to go outside the rails if the water stays rough. Vanessa, relax, I'm not jumping overboard. The sentence became painfully famous. Eric stopped targeting Melissa as aggressively after that. He shifted toward the yacht operator, then North Star, then, unexpectedly, me. A reporter emailed asking whether I would comment on allegations that Vanessa and I had been in conflict before the retreat. I read the message twice. The reporter attached screenshots from a project thread where Vanessa and I disagreed over a campaign attribution model. Professional disagreement, nothing more. In my previous life, those same emails had been presented as motive for murder. This time I had not been within miles of Vanessa when she fell. That should have made the implication absurd. It did not stop Eric. He posted a long statement about workplace bullying and competition. He wrote that Vanessa had been under extraordinary stress because certain colleagues resented her pregnancy and professional success. He wrote that one of her main competitors had cancelled the retreat unexpectedly just before the accident. No name, again, none needed. My phone began filling with messages. Did you know something? Why did you cancel? Were you fighting with Vanessa? I forwarded everything to counsel, then I went back to work. By afternoon, Eric appeared on a live stream and said, I'm not accusing anyone, I'm asking questions. That phrase has destroyed many people. It sounds responsible while carrying a loaded weapon behind its back. My attorney, Simone Brooks, called me that evening. Do you want to respond? Formally, good. What was your reason for canceling? Personal preference. I also had a client deliverable and my mother's medical appointment. Can you document those? Yes. Did you know Vanessa intended to go outside the rail? No. That answer was true in this life in every way that mattered legally. I had memory, not evidence. Simone continued. Did you tell anyone you believed the trip was unsafe? I told Rachel to stay behind the rails. After she sent me a picture, it was casual. Fine, that's normal. I also told her not to let anyone jump in after Vanessa fell unless crew instructed them, also normal. She paused. Jane, I'm going to say something obvious. You had no duty to attend a voluntary company retreat so you could potentially rescue an adult coworker from a danger she created herself. I looked out my apartment window. I know, do you? I almost laughed. I do now. The next morning, Simone sent Eric a formal notice demanding he stop making unsupported insinuations about me. His attorney replied that Eric had never accused me of anything. 2 days later Eric told another interviewer that, some people are fortunate they changed their plans at the last minute. Simone filed the complaint. That was the first time in either life that I sued someone to protect my own name before the damage became permanent. It felt less dramatic than drowning, much more effective. Chapter 8. What Vanessa had planned. The insurance investigation uncovered the part one had not fully understood in my first life. Vanessa had not planned to die, she had planned to get hurt, not badly, not even necessarily to fall into the ocean. Eric's business was failing, public filings showed unpaid judgments and a stack of commercial debt. Their home had been refinanced twice, credit card balances were high, Vanessa's salary kept their household stable, but they were living much more expensively than her income justified. Several weeks before the retreat, Vanessa and Eric exchanged messages about company liability. Most were vague enough to sound like dark humor. Vanessa, if I trip at this ridiculous luxury retreat, maybe North Star can finally pay off the kitchen. Eric, pregnant employee injured on corporate trip, lawyers would fight over you. Vanessa, don't tempt me. Then the questions became more specific. Eric searched whether an employee injured during a voluntary corporate event could claim workers' compensation or negligence damages. He searched whether violating posted safety rules would reduce compensation. He searched settlement ranges involving pregnancy complications. Vanessa increased her personal accident coverage. Again, none of those facts alone proved fraud. Together with messages to Melissa, they became harder to dismiss. One exchange mattered most. Vanessa, I only need a scare, nothing serious. If they think the baby was at risk, they'll settle before anyone wants bad press. Eric, do not write that stuff here. Vanessa, then stop asking how we're going to pay the card. I read those words in Simone's office after they entered discovery through the civil dispute. My hands went cold. She planned an accident, I said. Simone nodded carefully. It suggests she contemplated creating or exploiting one. We should let investigators characterize it. I stopped. My first life had nearly escaped my mouth. Simone looked up. In your what? In my head. I kept assuming the rail thing was just vanity, can coexist with money problems. I stared at the messages that explained something that had troubled me even after death. Why had Vanessa accused me so quickly? If the fall had been pure accident, panic might have made her lie, but her lie had been too useful, too financially precise. The couple had already built a mental framework in which an injury on a company trip was not only a crisis, it was an asset. When I saved Vanessa and died, they had simply discovered a more profitable version of the story. Attempted murder by a workplace rival, a dead rival who could not defend herself, the perfect claim. Simone tapped the page. This helps your defamation case because it establishes another motive for his public narrative. Will he be charged? That's for prosecutors and insurance investigators. Don't get ahead of evidence. She was right, I had spent my old life reacting to other people's stories. This time I would let documents speak in their own order. Outside the law office, Miami was hot and loud and offensively normal. I called my mother. Want lunch? It's 3 in the afternoon, late lunch. Did you forget to eat again? I smiled despite myself. Maybe. You're supposed to learn things as you get older. If only she knew. We met at a Cuban cafe near her house. I did not tell her about Vanessa's messages. Not yet. Margaret had already spent one life defending me from a dead woman's lie. In this one, she deserved at least one ordinary afternoon before the next headline. Chapter 9. A dead woman's resume. Death improves some people's reputations. Vanessa's became extraordinary. Within 2 weeks she had transformed online from a talented account manager into a visionary executive, devoted mother, fearless advocate for working women, and rising star. Cruelly taken before her time. Grief encourages generosity. I understood that. What I did not accept was the gradual rewriting of work she had not done. A memorial post from North Star's public account described Vanessa as a driving strategic force behind several of our most successful recent campaigns. The examples listed included Solstice Beauty and Arbor Home. I read the caption twice, then I emailed Rachel. Can we correct project attribution before this becomes part of the permanent record? She called instead of replying. Jane, it's a memorial post. I know. Do we need to do this now? If we publish something false now, when is the respectful time to correct it? She sighed. You know what people will say. They can say I'm insensitive. I'm not asking North Star to criticize Vanessa. I'm asking North Star not to assign my work to her because she died. Rachel was quiet. I continued. The Solstice segmentation model was mine. The Arbor launch framework was mine. Vanessa led client communication. We can honor what she did without giving her what I did. You're right. She sounded unhappy about it. That was fine. Truth did not become less true because it arrived at an inconvenient funeral. The post was edited that afternoon. The new version praised Vanessa's client leadership and relationship building. It no longer called her the architect of strategies she had not built. Eric noticed. Of course he did. He posted that North Star was already erasing Vanessa's professional legacy. Patricia wrote that jealous coworkers were stealing credit from a dead pregnant woman. The phrasing was so close to my previous life's accusations that nausea rolled through me. This time I had files. North Star's legal team had files. The clients had files. Rachel had files. I did not need to shout. Solstice's vice president of marketing sent North Star an unsolicited note confirming that I had led the analytics framework and Vanessa had managed account coordination. Arbor's team did the same after someone from communications asked for verification. Eric's claim lasted 2 days, then it died quietly beneath newer news. I learned something important. In my previous life I had thought reputation was a cloud, intangible, emotional, impossible to hold. In reality, much of reputation was documentation. Who sent the file, who wrote the memo, who attended the call, who changed the model, who received the client response. I had once believed documenting my own work looked insecure. Now I understood that failing to document it merely donated power to whoever spoke last. Vanessa had spoken last after I died, not this time. Chapter 10. Patricia's fundraiser. Patricia launched the fundraiser on a Sunday. The photograph showed Vanessa in a hospital bed from an earlier pregnancy check, smiling with one hand beneath her stomach. The title read, Justice for Vanessa and Baby Reed. The description said a pregnant employee had died during an unsafe corporate retreat after being permitted into a hazardous deck area with inadequate protection. It said the family faced funeral costs, legal expenses, and the loss of Vanessa's future income. It also said North Star and the yacht operator were refusing accountability. The campaign spread quickly. People donated because a pregnant woman and unborn child had died. I did not blame them. Then Patricia used part of the page to repeat Eric's insinuation that internal workplace conflict might have contributed to the circumstances surrounding Vanessa's emotional and physical state before the fall. My attorney saved everything. Do not respond personally. Simone told me. I wasn't planning to. Good, you sound surprised. Most clients who say they don't care about social media care very much about social media. I died on social media once, it loses novelty. The sentence came out before I could stop it. Simone stared at me. I recovered, metaphorically. Career-wise, you have a dramatic vocabulary for a data strategist. Occupational hazard. The fundraising platform eventually requested additional documentation after donors began flagging conflicts between the campaign description and the released video. Patricia changed the wording. She removed the claim that Vanessa had been permitted into the restricted area, then she began posting more emotional videos instead. Rules are not an excuse to abandon a pregnant woman, she said in one. No one had abandoned Vanessa. Crew members had launched the tender within moments. The Coast Guard had responded. Professional rescuers had searched until conditions made survival impossible. What Patricia meant was that no passenger had volunteered to become the second person in the water. She needed someone to have done what I did in my previous life, not because it was safe, because a dead rescuer would make the story more dramatic. The thought made me put down my phone. My mother was sitting across from me at her dining table, sorting coupons she never remembered to use. You're making that face again, she said. What face? The one where you're arguing with someone who isn't in the room. I smiled. Accurate. Stop reading about Vanessa. How do you know I was? Because when you read work email, you look irritated. When you read news about that poor woman, you look haunted. I reached for a coupon. She wasn't poor. Margaret's hands stopped. Jane, I corrected myself. I mean, she made a dangerous choice. That doesn't make her death anyone else's responsibility. My mother studied me. You really hated her. The answer mattered. No, that surprised even me. I had hated what she did after I saved her. I had hated her voice describing me as jealous. I had hated every dollar Eric tried to take from my mother. But now, with Vanessa dead from the consequence I had once absorbed, hatred felt smaller than memory. I don't think I hated her, I said. I think I hated being expected to pay for her choices. Margaret reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Then don't. Simple advice. It had taken me 2 lives to follow it. Chapter 11. The promotion nobody wanted to discuss. Strategy Director review resumed 6 weeks after the retreat. Northstar handled it badly at first. Leadership did not know whether mentioning Vanessa was disrespectful or necessary, so every conversation around the role became stiff. One executive suggested delaying the promotion for another quarter. Rachel disagreed. The work still exists, she said in a management meeting whose notes later reached me through normal review channels. Making everyone pretend the role disappeared does not honor Vanessa. The process continued. There were now 3 candidates instead of 4. I asked that the panel receive the same project archive that would have existed if Vanessa were alive. You don't want us to account for the circumstances? Nina asked. No, people may assume you benefited from her death. I looked at her. 1 candidate is gone. That changes the pool. It doesn't change my work. Evaluate my work. You're sure? Yes. The final interview focused on leadership, client retention, and strategic systems. No one asked me about the yacht. I was grateful. I presented the Solstice campaign framework, including the market anomaly I had caught while the retreat group was at sea. I showed how I had redesigned our client reporting structure so strategy ownership could not disappear inside account management language. One executive smiled. That's an oddly specific concern. Ambiguous ownership creates execution risk, and office politics. Those are often the same thing with worse slides. He laughed. I got the job, Rachel told me privately before the formal announcement. Congratulations, Director Carter. I sat very still. In my previous life, the role had never mattered again after the yacht. My career ended at 27 beneath several thousand feet of ocean and several million views of Vanessa's accusation. Now the title felt less like victory than proof of continuity. My life had continued past the point where it once stopped. You okay? Rachel asked. Yes. You look like you're about to cry. Promotions make me emotional, liar. I laughed. Northstar announced the promotion internally without linking it to Vanessa. Eric linked it for them. His post read, "My wife dies and her main workplace rival gets promoted into the role they were both chasing. Draw your own conclusions." Simone called before I finished reading. Do not type anything. I wasn't. I can hear your keyboard. I'm closing the tab. Good. We are adding this to the case. Northstar issued a short statement confirming the role had been filled through an established review process based on documented performance. Then the Solstice client publicly congratulated me. So did Arbor. Eric's implication weakened under the weight of boring evidence. Again, I started to appreciate boring evidence. It did not trend well, it survived longer. Chapter 12. Eric's numbers. The deeper the civil case went, the less Eric looked like a grieving husband searching for answers and the more he looked like a man searching for liquidity. His e-commerce company had been losing money for almost a year, a supplier had sued for unpaid invoices, 2 business credit lines were near their limits, the Reeds had refinanced their house and used part of the proceeds to cover company expenses. Vanessa knew, their private messages made that clear. 1 week before the retreat, Eric wrote, "If something doesn't change, we missed the commercial loan payment again." Vanessa replied, "My bonus review is next month." Eric, "Your bonus doesn't cover this." Vanessa, "Then maybe Northstar can." There was no explicit instruction to fake an injury, no message saying climb over the rail and fall. Fraud cases rarely arrive gift-wrapped, but investigators found that Vanessa had asked Human Resources about corporate event insurance after the retreat was announced. She asked whether medical expenses from an injury during the trip were covered. That was not criminal. Pregnant employees are allowed to ask about insurance. Then she asked a coworker whether Northstar had ever settled an injury claim quietly. Then Eric searched whether pregnancy complications increased civil damages. Then Vanessa joked to Melissa about making the company pay for a spa week if she slipped at the resort. All of it accumulated. The accident policy mattered too. Vanessa had increased coverage shortly before travel, again, understandable for someone expecting a baby, but Eric submitted the claim after her death while omitting information about the restricted area in an early statement. He described the location as an open observation deck. It was not. The insurer obtained the video. They asked him to correct the statement. He resisted. That decision turned a sad insurance dispute into something else. I learned about it through discovery because his public comments about me were tied to his theory of the accident. Simone spread several documents across her conference table. He's still arguing that workplace stress may have caused Vanessa to act unpredictably, meaning me, meaning Northstar, you, management, society, and possibly the moon if it pays. I looked at her. Is sarcasm billable? Very. She pointed to an email Eric sent his insurer. Vanessa would never have entered a hazardous area knowingly. She was extremely cautious because of the baby. We both stared at the video. Still beside it, Vanessa smiling outside the rail. One picture. What happens now? I asked. The insurer handles its investigation. Our case remains defamation. Northstar handles corporate claims. Marine authorities handle safety conclusions. The important thing for you is not to turn yourself into a detective. I know. Do you? I have a professional problem with people asking me that. She smiled. I left her office and walked 3 blocks before ordering a rideshare. The air smelled like rain. In my old life, I had investigated too late because no one else was protecting me. This time I had lawyers, company records, investigators, insurers, and witnesses. The world was full of systems when you were alive to use them. Chapter 13, Melissa tells the whole truth. Melissa asked to meet me at a cafe away from Northstar. She looked exhausted. I need to tell you something before someone else finds it. I waited. She placed her phone on the table. Vanessa asked me before the retreat whether you were definitely going. My fingers tightened around my cup. What did you say? That you were on the list. Then after you cancelled, she texted me. Melissa opened a saved message thread. Vanessa, Jane isn't coming. Melissa, apparently not. Vanessa, seriously. Melissa, she says personal reasons. Vanessa, that's annoying. Melissa, why? Vanessa, never mind. Means I get better pictures without her judging me. I read the exchange twice. Why is that important? Melissa asked. In my previous life, Vanessa had used my presence to create a murder accusation after the accident. Had she planned that in advance? Probably not exactly, but she had expected me there, expected me to object, expected me to be useful somehow. I kept my answer grounded in this life. It may not be important. Give it to your lawyer and investigators with everything else. Melissa nodded. There's more. Of course there was. She showed me another conversation from the week before the trip. Vanessa, if I do the outside rail shot, Jane is going to have a stroke. Melissa, because it's stupid. Vanessa, she loves rules. Melissa, crew may stop you. Vanessa, then I'll say Jane told me people do it all the time. Melissa had answered with a laughing emoji. She looked sick now. I thought she was joking. Were you? What? When you called it stupid? Yes. Then why agree to take the picture? Melissa looked down. Because she was Vanessa. That answer contained an entire office culture. Vanessa pushed. People yielded. Vanessa reframed caution as jealousy, safety as sexism, boundaries as personal attacks, and people found it easier to laugh and cooperate than become the boring person saying no. I had done it too, until the water. Melissa rubbed her eyes. I keep thinking if I'd put the phone down, she'd still be alive. Maybe. She looked up sharply. I continued. Or she might have handed the phone to someone else, or taken a selfie, or done it the next day. You made a bad choice by helping. Don't turn that into ownership of every choice she made afterward. You really believe that? I have to. She did not know how literal that was. If I believed everyone near a reckless choice owned the outcome, then I had deserved to die for not stopping Vanessa harder in my previous life. I refused that logic now. Melissa turned over the messages. They became another piece of evidence that Vanessa knowingly planned to violate the safety restriction and had considered using my name as cover if challenged, not proof of a murder plot, not proof she intended to fall, just proof that the story of a cautious pregnant employee innocently wandering into danger was false. Facts did not need to be bigger than they were, they only needed to be true. Chapter 14. My mother's house. Eric's insinuations reached my mother eventually. Reporter knocked on her door. That was the line. Margaret called me, furious rather than frightened. There is a man on my porch asking whether you and Vanessa were enemies. Don't answer. I'm coming over. I already told him to get off my property. Good. Then I turned the sprinkler on. I paused. Mom, what? He was standing near the hydrangeas. I laughed so hard I had to sit down. In my previous life, the press had stood outside this same house after my death while my mother hid behind the curtains. Now she had weaponized lawn care. I arrived with Simone's recommended media notice and helped put a no trespassing sign near the walkway. Margaret made tea. Tell me what this man thinks you did. Nothing specific. That's the trick. Eric keeps asking why I canceled the retreat and saying Vanessa and I competed for a promotion. You canceled because you didn't want to go, correct? Are people no longer allowed to stay home? Apparently suspicious women must attend all optional boating events. She snorted, then her expression softened. Jane, did you know something was wrong with that trip? My breath stopped for half a beat. Why would you ask that? Because you hate canceling things after people spend money on you. You complained for a week about wasting the deposit on a yoga retreat when you had the flu. My mother knew me too well. I chose the closest truth. I had a bad feeling about the boat, about going. She studied me, and you listened to it. Yes, good, that was all. She did not demand evidence for instinct. She did not ask me to justify being alive. We drank tea. Later, I walked through her guest room and stopped at the closet where she had kept my funeral dress in the previous life. Not my dress, hers, black, simple. Bought because she had never owned anything appropriate for burying a child in this life. The closet held old blankets and a vacuum cleaner. I closed the door. Some victories were invisible because the tragedy they replaced never happened. Those were my favorites. Chapter 15. The Marine Report. The preliminary Marine Report was brutally ordinary. The vessel was operating within permitted conditions. Crew members had conducted a safety briefing. Restricted areas were marked. Passengers had been warned to remain inside barriers as sea conditions became rougher. Vanessa entered a restricted exterior area despite a direct instruction to return. A wave caused loss of balance. Crew initiated man overboard procedures. Rescue equipment was deployed. A tender launched. External rescue authorities were notified. There were recommendations about improving physical barriers and restricting passenger access more aggressively during rough conditions. There were no findings that another passenger pushed Vanessa, no finding that a passenger could reasonably have been expected to jump into the water. No heroic language, no villainous language, just sequence. That sequence destroyed most of Eric's preferred story. He attacked the report as self-protective. Patricia said the marine industry protected its own. Then Eric made the mistake of saying publicly, if trained people had acted faster, Vanessa would be alive. One of the rescue crew members gave a rare interview. He did not sound angry. That made it worse for Eric. We acted immediately, he said. What we do not encourage is untrained passengers entering open water during a recovery. That can create additional victims. Additional victims. I turned off the television. My mother was beside me. You okay? Yes. But the words had struck bone. In my previous life, I was the additional victim, not because I was brave enough to ignore safety, because I had mistaken urgency for obligation. The report made another point clear. Vanessa had not simply slipped while leaning over an ordinary railing. She crossed it. That fact changed the insurance negotiations. It changed public sympathy. It changed North Star's exposure. It did not erase grief. Patricia still lost a daughter. Eric still lost a wife and child. But grief did not get to edit physics. A barrier remained a barrier even after the person who crossed it died. Chapter 16. The defamation case. Eric could have stopped. That is important. After the Marine Report. After Melissa's video. After North Star documented my work. After my cancellation email showed a normal decision made before any accident. Eric could have said grief made him suspicious and withdrawn his insinuations. I might still have disliked him. I probably would have ended the lawsuit after a clear retraction. He did not stop. He went on a podcast. The host asked whether he believed North Star employees had contributed to Vanessa's death. Eric said, I believe certain people had reason to want Vanessa out of the way professionally. The host asked who. Eric replied, I think everyone can see who benefited. The clip spread beside my promotion announcement. Simone sent a final demand for retraction. Eric refused. We proceeded. Discovery was unpleasant and useful. My work messages were reviewed, so were his. Vanessa's surviving digital records entered the case were relevant. My relationship with Vanessa looked exactly like what it was: competitive, occasionally tense, professionally functional. I had criticized her for taking credit. She had complained that I was rigid, had never threatened her, never wished harm, never told anyone she should not be on the retreat. Eric's records looked worse. He had sent a friend a message after my promotion: if I keep pressure on Carter, North Star may settle just to shut this down. The friend replied, do you actually think she had something to do with Vanessa falling? Eric, doesn't matter. Companies hate uncertainty. I read it in silence. Simone watched my face. You okay? He doesn't even believe it, apparently not strongly. He was willing to damage my career because uncertainty might pay. Yes. The simplicity hurt more than hatred would have. In my old life, Vanessa and Eric had destroyed my name because money and self-protection were more convenient than truth. Here was the same logic in writing: doesn't matter, companies hate uncertainty, dead women hate it too. I thought, we just cannot sue. This time I could. The case ended before trial. Eric agreed to a formal retraction, damages, and legal costs after his insurer refused to cover intentional defamatory statements made outside protected claims activity. The money was not enormous. I did not need it to be. The retraction mattered more. It said, I have no evidence that Jane Carter caused, anticipated, encouraged, or contributed to Vanessa Reed's accident. Statements suggesting otherwise were unsupported. I printed it once, then put it in a drawer. I had spent another life waiting for a dead woman's accusation to disappear. In this one, it took a living man's signature. Chapter 17. Fraud does not become grief. The insurance case outlived the defamation case. Eric had submitted multiple claims connected to Vanessa's death: personal accident coverage, employer-related benefits, and other policies I did not need to understand in detail. The problem was not that he filed claims. He was entitled to file legitimate claims. The problem was what he said in them. In one early statement, he described Vanessa as being in an authorized passenger area. In another, he claimed there had been no direct warning immediately before the fall. Both assertions contradicted. Video: his attorney blamed grief and incomplete information. Then investigators found that Eric had received a copy of Melissa's video before submitting one of the disputed statements. That was harder to explain. The matter moved beyond ordinary claim disagreement. North Star employees were interviewed, so was Melissa. I was asked about Vanessa's comments before the retreat. I answered narrowly. She wanted photographs. She had said she was excited. I had no personal knowledge of her insurance plans or conversations with Eric before investigators uncovered them. I did not mention my previous life. I did not need to. The evidence in this one was enough. Eric eventually faced charges related to false statements and attempted insurance fraud. The exact legal language mattered less to me than the fact that the process no longer required my mother to defend a corpse. Patricia reacted by attacking everyone involved. She called prosecutors heartless. She called the insurer predatory. She called North Star murderous. Then the fundraising platform froze the remaining balance in her campaign pending review of its descriptions and intended use. Donors had begun requesting refunds. Some had donated specifically because Patricia claimed Vanessa had been forced into an unsafe work activity. The released emails showed otherwise. Patricia's grief became angrier. I almost felt sorry for her. Then she posted my mother's address. Not intentionally, she claimed. She shared a screenshot of a legal document and failed to redact the line containing Margaret Street. Within hours, strangers were commenting beneath the post. I stopped feeling sorry. Simone sent an emergency demand for removal. The platform took the image down. Patricia was warned formally. My mother changed her security system. People have too much time, she said while a technician installed a new camera. You're taking this well. I'm 70% angry and 30% enjoying the new doorbell. Healthy balance. She looked at me. Do not pay for it. I already did, Jane. Consider it restitution for years of not answering your texts. She rolled her eyes. I smiled. My mother could complain about a doorbell because she was not selling her home to defend my estate. I would never get tired of that difference. Chapter 18. What Melissa learned. North Star disciplined Melissa, not for Vanessa's death, for ignoring a crew's safety instruction enough to continue filming a coworker entering a restricted area and for failing to Intervene appropriately as an employee participating in a company event. The punishment was serious but not career-ending. She lost eligibility for the next promotion cycle and had to complete safety and risk training before attending future company travel. Some employees thought that was harsh, others thought it was too light. Melissa accepted it. That mattered. She came to my office after the decision. I deserved some of it. Yes, she laughed without humor. You really don't do comforting lies anymore. I'm trying a new thing. I keep replaying it. If I had said no to the photo, maybe she'd be alive. Melissa looked at me. I continued, that possibility is real, so is the possibility she would have found someone else. You should learn from what you controlled, not pretend you controlled the ocean. She sat down. Vanessa used to make me feel boring when I said no. She did that to everyone. You used to argue with her more. Not enough. Melissa rubbed her hands together. Eric asked me why I didn't save her. My chest tightened. What did you say? That I can't do open water rescue. Good, he said Jane could. I went still. Melissa realized too late what she had said. I'm sorry, it's fine. He was implying if you'd come, maybe. I know what he was implying. She leaned forward. You don't owe her your life. For a moment I could not speak. This woman had failed me in my previous life by staying silent. Now she was telling me the sentence I had needed before I jumped. I smiled faintly. No, I said, I don't. Chapter 19. The house they could not keep. Eric's legal problems did not create his financial collapse, they accelerated one already underway. His company entered bankruptcy proceedings after losing a key supplier and failing to refinance debt. The Reed home went on the market. Patricia blamed North Star publicly, then she blamed the insurer, then she blamed Eric. The family alliance that had seemed absolute after Vanessa's death fractured quickly. Once money stopped moving toward them, Patricia accused Eric of turning Vanessa's death into a business plan. Eric accused Patricia of making reckless public statements that damaged the claims. They fought over fundraiser money, they fought over funeral expenses, they fought over who had encouraged Vanessa to increase the accident policy. And then investigators obtained one final message exchange between Vanessa and Eric from before the retreat. Vanessa, Mom thinks I should stop climbing things now that I'm pregnant. Eric, for once listen to her. Vanessa, if I get hurt at North Star's fancy retreat maybe she can finally stop asking us for money. Eric, not funny. Vanessa, a little funny. It did not prove Patricia planned anything, it proved Vanessa had a long habit of treating injury as something financially convertible. That habit killed her more surely than any enemy could have. When the Reed house sold, I felt no pleasure, only recognition. In my previous life, my mother had nearly lost her home because Vanessa's family sued my estate. This time they lost theirs under the weight of debts they already carried and choices they made afterward. I did not cause either mortgage, I did not file Eric's false statements, I did not write Patricia's fundraiser, I did not push Vanessa over a rail. For the first time, I could watch consequences without volunteering to become their accountant. Chapter 20. A life that kept going. The strangest part of rebirth was discovering how much life existed after the scene that once killed me. There were meetings, dental appointments, bad movies, laundry, client calls. My mother developed an obsession with pickleball. Rachel adopted a cat that hated everyone except delivery drivers. North Star changed yacht vendors and added a rule that employees could not enter restricted vessel areas even for sanctioned content shoots. I hired 2 analysts as strategy director. One was brilliant and terrified of speaking in meetings, the other spoke too much and had to learn that confidence was not a substitute for checking a denominator. I liked managing them. I had never expected to. One Friday, the younger analyst sent me a report close to midnight. I saw the notification the next morning. When I opened the file, I noticed the edit history showed she had worked for hours after our team signed off. I called her. Why were you working that late? She panicked. I wanted it ready for you. It wasn't due until Monday. I know, but I thought, don't. Silence. I softened my voice. Do good work, meet deadlines, tell me early if you're blocked. Do not make exhaustion part of your performance review. Okay, I'm serious. Okay. I hung up and stared at the phone. In my first life, I had been proud of being the person who always jumped into work, into conflict, into water. I thought usefulness made me safe. It did not. Boundaries did. Chapter 21. The search that found more than a body. The Coast Guard closed its formal search weeks before the legal disputes ended, but the equipment review continued. Every camera attached to the yacht mattered. Most showed nothing useful. Spray, sky, passengers turning their backs at the wrong moment. One deck camera had been partially blocked by a decorative panel, another had failed to capture the exact angle of the stern, then a crew member remembered an action camera clipped to a maintenance vest. He had forgotten about it because he had been off duty when the trip began and put the vest on only after the sea grew rougher. The file was recovered from a storage card. It showed the same sequence as Melissa's video from another angle, Vanessa walking toward the restricted stern, the deckhand lifting one hand, his warning, Vanessa laughing, the rail crossing, no one close enough to touch her, then the roll of the vessel and her disappearance. The footage also captured something Melissa's phone had not. Before Vanessa stepped over, she turned toward the crewman and said, "Relax, I'm not suing anybody, it was a joke." At least it sounded like one. The sentence became ugly in context. Eric's attorney argued that it proved nothing about intent. He was right about that. A joke was not a confession, but the footage made one thing impossible to deny. Vanessa knew she was violating a safety instruction. The insurer revised its position. The yacht operator's exposure narrowed. North Star's legal posture strengthened. Eric's public claim that his wife had wandered unknowingly into a dangerous space collapsed completely. The local station that had once run Patricia's emotional interview aired the new footage beside the old clip. Patricia looked into a camera and said, "My daughter was not reckless." Then the footage showed Vanessa smiling outside the rail. I watched from my office because communications asked me to review whether North Star needed to respond. We did not. The video responded for us. Rachel stood near the window. "This is awful." "Yes, I mean, for everyone." "Yes." She looked at me. "Do you ever feel guilty you didn't go?" I did not answer immediately. A year earlier I would have lied and said no. Now I understood guilt could exist without obligation. "Sometimes," I said, "but feeling guilty doesn't mean I made the wrong choice." Rachel nodded slowly. "That's annoyingly healthy. I'm experimenting." She smiled. The footage was admitted into the related proceedings. No one ever seriously suggested again that another passenger had caused Vanessa to fall. For me, the impact was stranger. I had spent my previous death waiting for proof that did not appear until my name was already damaged. This time proof arrived while I could see it. I expected vindication to feel like thunder. It felt like paperwork, a file uploaded, a claim amended, a headline corrected, a dead woman's choice finally described in the passive, boring language of evidence. That was enough. Chapter 22. The settlement Eric wanted and the one he got. Eric eventually asked to settle my defamation case before it reached trial. His attorney requested mediation. Simone asked what I wanted. A public retraction, money, legal fees, actual damages. I don't need a dramatic number, and confidentiality. No, she smiled. "I thought you'd say that." Eric wanted confidentiality. Of course he did. He wanted to pay quietly and continue implying publicly that the truth was complicated. I refused. Mediation lasted most of a day. I sat across from a man I had watched help destroy my mother in another life. He looked older than I remembered from Vanessa's hospital room. Grief had changed him, so had debt. Neither made him harmless. At one point he asked to speak directly to me. Simone agreed only after setting clear boundaries. Eric leaned forward. "You hated her." "No." "You competed with her." "Yes." "You cancelled right before the trip." "Yes." "And then she died." "Yes." He stared as if sequence itself were evidence. "You don't think that's strange?" "No." "Why not?" "Because I had already drowned once." Instead I said, "Because people cancel optional trips every day." His jaw tightened. "If you'd been there, she might be alive." There it was. I had been waiting for him to say it to my face. I looked at him carefully. "Maybe." He blinked. He had expected denial. "Then you admit it." "I admit I can swim. I admit I might have tried to help. I do not admit that my life was part of your wife's safety plan." The room went silent. Eric's attorney shifted in his chair. I continued. "The yacht had trained crew. The Coast Guard responded. Your wife ignored a direct warning and crossed a barrier. The fact that I might have been capable of taking an additional personal risk does not make me responsible for not being there." Eric's face changed. "She was pregnant." "I know. You sound cold." "No, I sound alive." Simone touched my arm lightly under the table, not to stop me, to remind me I had said enough. Eric looked away. We settled that evening. The retraction was public. He paid my legal costs and compensatory damages. He acknowledged he had no evidence I caused, anticipated, or contributed to Vanessa's accident. When the statement appeared online, people wanted me to celebrate. I ordered takeout with my mother instead. Margaret read the retraction on her tablet. "He should apologize better. That's the legally expensive version." "Still weak." "I agree." She handed the tablet back. "Are you done with him now? Unless he starts again." "Good, eat your noodles." I did. It was the first meal after a major legal victory in either life that did not taste like seawater. Chapter 23. Patricia runs out of audience. Patricia's fundraiser survived longer than Eric's accusations. Grief makes people generous, anger keeps them watching. Patricia understood both. Her page changed themes every time evidence changed. At first North Star forced Vanessa into danger, then the yacht operator failed to protect her, then Melissa encouraged dangerous content, then corporate competition made Vanessa emotionally vulnerable, then everyone was exploiting a dead woman, the only thing that never entered Patricia's story was Vanessa's agency. The fundraising platform requested receipts for legal spending and clarification about statements that had been contradicted by official findings. Several donors complained that they had contributed believing Vanessa had been required to participate in a dangerous work event. The platform froze withdrawals. Patricia responded by posting a video accusing the company of silencing a grieving mother. It received far fewer views than her first one. Public attention is cruel that way, it leaves before pain does. Without a clear villain, people moved on. A celebrity divorce replaced her story, then a hurricane threat, then an election scandal. Patricia kept posting into a shrinking audience. One afternoon she appeared outside North Star headquarters with a sign demanding justice. Security kept her on the public sidewalk. I saw her through a conference room window. For a moment I remembered my previous life, when my mother stood outside a courthouse while reporters asked whether she believed I had been jealous of Vanessa. I could have gone downstairs. I did not. Patricia had lost a daughter. I did not need to win an argument over the body. Eventually she left. Months later, the fundraising platform refunded part of the remaining balance to donors and released only documented eligible expenses under revised terms. Patricia's accusations created additional legal scrutiny because some statements were materially inconsistent with known facts. She was not sent to prison. She did not need a melodramatic punishment. Her consequence was smaller and more realistic. The audience stopped believing her. For someone who had tried to turn grief into moral authority, that was devastating. Chapter 24. The fraud case. Eric's criminal case was not about mourning too aggressively, it was about documents. He had submitted insurance statements after receiving evidence that contradicted them. He had represented the restricted stern area as an ordinary observation zone. He had omitted direct warnings visible in recordings. He had attempted to support a compensation theory with facts investigators concluded were materially false. The prosecutors did not need to prove he caused Vanessa's death. They did not claim he had. They needed to prove what he did after. That distinction mattered. I attended only when subpoenaed. I did not sit through every hearing. I had a company to help run and a mother who had developed a competitive interest in pickleball tournaments. When I testified, Eric's attorney asked whether I disliked Vanessa. We had professional disagreements. Did you believe she took credit for your work? Yes. Did you resent her? Sometimes. The attorney looked almost pleased. And you cancelled the retreat immediately before her death? Yes. Why? Because I did not want to go. That's all. That's enough. A few jurors smiled. The prosecutor later asked whether I had any financial interest in Eric's insurance claims. No. Whether I had encouraged Vanessa to enter the restricted area. No. Whether I had been on the yacht. No. Whether Eric continued publicly implying my involvement after videos showed Vanessa crossed the rail herself. Yes. My part was brief. Eric's own records did most of the work. He eventually accepted a plea on charges connected to attempted insurance fraud and false statements rather than risk a broader trial. The sentence included incarceration, restitution obligations, and financial penalties. It did not look like revenge. It looked like a man sitting in a plain courtroom while a clerk read numbers. The numbers were enough. His business was already bankrupt, the house was already gone, his wife and unborn child were already dead. None of that excused what he did, none of it made his punishment feel joyful either. I left the courthouse and stood in sunlight for several minutes. Simone joined me. You expected to feel different. It was not a question, maybe. Closure is mostly a marketing term. That's comforting. I bill for realism. I laughed, then I went back to work. Chapter 25. North Star learns the wrong lesson first. Companies respond to tragedy with policies, sometimes good ones, sometimes policies designed mainly to prove someone responded. North Star's first draft retreat policy was terrible. It proposed banning pregnant employees from all marine activities. I read the document and called Nina. No, she sighed. I knew you'd say that. You cannot take Vanessa ignoring a barrier and turn it into pregnant women cannot board boats. Legal is nervous. Legal can be nervous without discriminating. We revised it. The final policy focused on risk categories, not pregnancy. Restricted areas would be physically controlled where practical. Safety briefings would be documented. Professional rescue instructions would explicitly tell employees not to enter open water unless trained and directed. Participation in high-risk activities would remain optional for everyone. Medical accommodations would be offered individually. I insisted on One line, no employee is expected to endanger their own life attempting a rescue beyond their training. Nina read it. Specific, necessary, you know people may call it the Jane Clause, they can call it Kevin if they follow it. She laughed. The policy went into effect before the next retreat. That retreat was at a resort on land. I still declined, not because I feared tragedy, because I had discovered I did not actually enjoy mandatory feeling corporate leisure. That may have been the least supernatural lesson of my rebirth. Chapter 26. My mother's birthday. Margaret turned 63 that winter. In my previous life, she spent that birthday alone except for my aunt and 2 neighbors, had already been dead for months. The legal case was still active. Vanessa's accusations still appeared in search results beside my name. My mother blew out 1 candle on a grocery store cupcake because she said a full cake would go stale. I had watched from nowhere. This time I rented a table at her favorite restaurant, not a private room, not a surprise party. She hated both. We invited 6 people she actually liked. She wore a blue dress and complained that the waiter brought too many appetizers halfway through dinner. She looked at me and said, "You know this is excessive. There are 8 people." Exactly. Try to survive the attention. She smiled. After dessert, she gave me a small envelope. "It's your birthday gift to me," I said. "Open it." Inside was a photograph from years earlier. My father, who died when I was in college, stood between us at the beach. I was 15 and holding a snorkel mask. "I found it in a drawer," Margaret said. "You used to love the water." I looked at the photograph. I still did. That surprised me. The ocean had killed me once, but the ocean was not Vanessa. It was not Eric. It was not a courtroom. It had never promised fairness. I slipped the picture back into the envelope. "Maybe I'll dive again." My mother looked alarmed. "Let's not become too psychologically healthy." I laughed. A month later, I enrolled in an advanced open water safety course, not to become a rescuer, to reclaim a thing I had loved before it became the place I died. Chapter 27. The water again. My instructor was a woman named Carla who had spent 15 years teaching divers not to panic. On the first day, she said, "Most water emergencies become worse when one person makes another person's panic their own." I nearly walked out. Instead I stayed. We practiced controlled entries, surface signaling, flotation assistance, and distance management. Carla repeated a rule until everyone was tired of hearing it: "Your safety is part of the rescue." In my previous life, that sentence might have saved me, or maybe I would still have jumped. I had reached Vanessa because I cared. Caring was not the mistake. Believing my life became expendable the moment someone else was in danger was. The first time I returned to open water, my chest tightened so hard I thought I would be sick. Carla noticed. "You can stop." The permission did more for me than encouragement would have. I floated on my back, looked at the sky, breathed, then continued because I chose to. At the end of the course, Carla asked whether I wanted rescue diver certification. "No," she laughed. Fastest answer all week. I know my lane now. That became another private joke with myself. Stay in your lane, stay behind the rail, leave when you want to leave. Do not volunteer your body as collateral for someone else's choice. Simple lessons, expensive tuition. Chapter 28. Melissa leaves North Star. Melissa resigned the following spring, not because North Star fired her, because she wanted to start over somewhere people did not look at her and remember the phone in her hand. Before she left, she asked me to lunch. "I got an offer in Seattle." "Congratulations. Smaller company, less glamorous." "Glamour is expensive." She smiled. I wanted to say thank you. For what? Telling me to save the video. I looked at her. "You saved yourself. You told me what to do, and you did it. Keep the important part." She nodded. "I still think about her." "So do I." "Do you think she meant to fall?" "No, that was easy." Vanessa wanted leverage, attention, maybe a scare she could monetize. She did not want death. Melissa traced the edge of her water glass. "Sometimes that makes it worse." "Why?" "Because it means people can destroy themselves without deciding to." I thought about my previous life. I had not decided to die either. I had simply decided to jump. "Yes," I said, "that's why small choices matter." Melissa looked at me curiously. "You talk like someone twice your age." I smiled. "Bad year." We hugged goodbye. I forgave her enough to wish her well. I did not rewrite the part where she had helped Vanessa take the dangerous picture. Both things could be true. Chapter 29. Eric's letter. Months into his sentence, Eric sent me a letter. Simone forwarded a scanned copy after confirming there was no legal reason I needed to respond. The first paragraph apologized, the second explained, the third blamed grief, the fourth blamed debt. Then came the sentence that told me he still did not understand. "If you had been on that boat, maybe all of us would have been spared this." I read it twice, then laughed, not because it was funny, because the old logic had survived everything. If Jane had attended, if Jane had warned harder, if Jane had jumped, if Jane had saved Vanessa, if Jane had died more usefully, someone else's life still needed to be the missing component in his plan. I did not answer. I put the letter through a shredder at Simone's office. She raised an eyebrow. No sentimental archive. I have enough documents. Growth, also storage limits. We watched the strips fall into the bin. That was the closest thing to closure I ever needed. Chapter 30. The name search. A year after Vanessa's death, I searched my own name. I had avoided doing it compulsively because I remembered how my mother did it in the first life. Checking whether another cruel headline had appeared. This time the results were ordinary. North Star promotion announcement, conference panel, a client case study, a short article about our new strategy team. The defamation retraction appeared lower down, so did an old article about Vanessa's accident. My name was mentioned only as a coworker who had cancelled before the retreat and later challenged unsupported public claims. No killer, no hero, just me. I closed the browser. In my old life, strangers argued over whether I was a monster while my mother begged platforms to remove threats. Had thought clearing my name would feel like becoming famous for innocence. Instead I wanted obscurity, a normal search result, work, professional biography, nothing about how I died. That was another form of wealth. Chapter 31. The offer to leave. 2 years after the retreat, a larger firm recruited me. The role paid more and required less travel. North Star countered aggressively. Rachel asked me to stay. Nina offered a retention package. The chief strategy officer talked about loyalty. That word made me careful. I had once been loyal enough to jump into the sea for someone who later called me a killer. Loyalty was not inherently noble. It depended on what it asked you to abandon. I chose the new job. North Star did not collapse. Rachel remained my friend. The client survived. Someone else became strategy director. The company continued without me. That was strangely healing too. I was valuable. I was not indispensable. There is freedom in learning the difference. At my farewell lunch, Nina gave me a card signed by the department. Rachel wrote, "Thanks for teaching us that being useful is not the same thing as being available for everything." I stared at it longer than any of the congratulations. "Too sincere?" she asked. "Disgusting." She hugged me. My new company had a quieter culture, a better retirement contribution, and absolutely no yacht tradition. I considered that a benefit. Chapter 32. The island I chose. 3 years after Vanessa died, my mother asked if I wanted to take a vacation. Where? Somewhere with water. I stared at her. "You become reckless. I have travel points." We booked a small island resort reachable by ferry. No corporate retreat, no client presentation, no pregnant coworker climbing anything for content, just us. At the ferry terminal, staff checked tickets and gave a brief safety announcement. "Remain behind marked railings. Do not enter crew areas. In an emergency, follow staff instructions." My mother nudged me. "You look intense." "I'm appreciating procedure. Very relaxing." We sat outside once the ferry cleared the harbor. Wind lifted Margaret's hair. The water was deep blue. I expected memory to attack. Instead I felt sad, not afraid. Vanessa had been 29. Her baby never had a name beyond the one she and Eric discussed privately. I could acknowledge the waste without volunteering to undo it. My mother handed me sunscreen. "You're burning." "I just got here." "Your father could burn in moonlight. You inherited it." I put on sunscreen. Life continued in humiliatingly ordinary ways. On the island we ate grilled fish, walked through a botanical garden, and argued about whether a hotel breakfast should cost $28. Margaret won that argument by stealing fruit for later. On the last morning, I woke before her and walked to the beach. No one else was there. I stood ankle-deep in water. The current pulled lightly around my feet. Once, water had been the last thing I felt. Now it was simply water again. I cried then, quietly, not for Vanessa, not even for my old self, for the distance between the two women I had been. One believed a good person always jumped, the other knew a good person was allowed to stay alive. Chapter 33. What happened to the Reeds? I did not track the Reed family deliberately. News arrived anyway. Patricia moved to a smaller apartment after legal and financial problems consumed much of what remained from the family estate. Her fundraiser disappeared. Her social media accounts became private. She stopped giving interviews. Eric's business was liquidated in bankruptcy. The house sold. He served his sentence and later entered supervised release with restitution still owed. None of them received the fortune they once imagined could come from Vanessa's injury. There was no giant company settlement, no transformative insurance payment based on a false story, no profitable victim brand. Vanessa died. The money never came. That was the ugliest irony. In my previous life, saving her had created the asset they wanted most, a living, sympathetic survivor who could accuse a dead coworker. In this life, the person whose story was supposed to generate money was not there to tell it. I did not consider that justice would have been Vanessa stepping back inside the rail, going home, having her baby, paying off debts slowly, and perhaps becoming a better person. Life did not choose justice, it chose consequence. My responsibility was not to confuse the two. Chapter 34, The Question at the Conference. At a leadership conference, I joined a panel about decision-making under uncertainty. Nothing about the retreat was in the official topic. Someone in the audience recognized my name anyway. During questions, a woman asked, "Were you the North Star employee who canceled the yacht trip before that fatal accident?" The room shifted. I could have declined. Instead I said, "Yes." "Do you think people have a duty to intervene when they can save someone?" A complicated question disguised as a simple one. I thought about Vanessa's hands dragging me underwater. I thought about crew members shouting after me. I thought about my mother's funeral dress that did not exist in this life. "Sometimes," I said, "but capability isn't unlimited. A person can help without treating their own life as disposable." The woman nodded. "Would you have jumped if you'd been there?" The room became very quiet. I smiled faintly. "That's why I'm glad I wasn't." A few people laughed nervously. I continued, "The professionals on that vessel advised passengers not to enter the water." That's the relevant answer. We romanticize untrained rescue because we like heroes, but a rescue that creates another victim is not automatically brave. After the panel, a man approached me. His brother had drowned trying to save someone in a river. "I wish someone had told him that," he said. I did not know what to say, so I said the truth. "I'm sorry." He nodded. That was enough. Chapter 35, The Anniversary Nobody Celebrated. The first anniversary of Vanessa's death arrived without ceremony at North Star. There was no company-wide memorial, no slideshow, no mandatory moment of silence. Human Resources sent a private note to employees who had been on the retreat reminding them that counseling remained available. Rachel forwarded it to me with a single sentence. "Feels like 10 years and yesterday." I understood, had lived the day twice. That morning, I checked the date and felt my body react before my mind did. My shoulders tightened, my palms became damp. Somewhere far from Miami, the ocean existed with no awareness that a woman had once died in it and another had once escaped dying there by tearing a form. I went to work. At lunch, a newer employee asked why North Star no longer held yacht retreats. Someone at the table said, "There was an accident before your time." The conversation moved on. That was all. For the new employees, Vanessa was not a legend, she was a line in company risk history. I expected that to offend me somehow. Instead it was a relief. The dead should be remembered by people who loved them. They do not need to remain permanent architecture in every workplace they once entered. That evening, I visited my mother. Margaret had made soup even though it was too hot for soup. "You look tired," she said. "Long day, anniversary." I looked at her. She shrugged. "I remember dates too." Of course she did. In another life, this had been the anniversary of losing me. Here, it was only the anniversary of almost doing so. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if I'd gone?" I asked. My mother stirred the soup. "No, never. I try not to build houses in places I don't live." I smiled. "That's annoyingly wise. I'm old. We collect phrases instead of hobbies. You play pickleball 4 days a week. That's not a hobby. That's war." I laughed. After dinner, I drove home without checking news archives, Vanessa's old social accounts, or court databases. The anniversary passed. That became another victory. Chapter 36, The Client Who Wanted a Hero. At my new firm, a major client experienced a product recall that threatened a national launch. The account team panicked. By late afternoon, messages filled every channel. People volunteered to work through the night. A vice president said we needed all hands until this is fixed. The phrase used to activate something in me. All hands meant mine too. Always. I called a short meeting. "We're not doing a 20-hour sprint," I said. One manager looked startled. "The client expects a response by morning." "They'll have one. We have enough people." Split the work. 2 teams rotate. Anyone who has been online since this morning signs off after handover. "Jane, this is a crisis." "Yes, exhaustion makes people worse at crises." We built a coverage plan. The world did not end. The client received a response. No one slept under a desk. 2 days later, the same manager told me, "I thought you were being too conservative." And now I think half the work I used to call commitment was just poor staffing. I smiled. That lesson connected to the yacht more than he knew. People love heroes because heroes are cheaper than systems. A company that expects one exhausted person to save a project has a staffing problem. A boat that expects one untrained passenger to save another passenger has a rescue problem. A family that expects one daughter to sacrifice herself has a boundary problem. Heroism is useful in emergencies. it is dangerous as a business model. That night, I closed my laptop before dinner. No one died. I kept noticing that. Chapter 37, the interview I refused. A streaming documentary producer contacted me after Eric's case ended. They wanted to make an episode about Vanessa. The working title was Behind the Rail. I hated that they had independently chosen the phrase I privately associated with the whole experience. The producer said the story had everything audiences cared about: corporate pressure, pregnancy, social media, insurance fraud, maritime rescue, workplace rivalry, and a haunting alternate question about what might have happened if I had attended. I read the proposal twice, then declined. They increased the offer. I declined again. They offered editorial consultation. No, a producer called directly. Jane, people are going to tell this story with or without you. Wouldn't you rather control your part? That argument almost worked. It sounded like every reason I had spent years wanting to explain myself in my previous life. If I did not speak, someone else would. If I did not correct every version, lies might survive. Then I realized something had already corrected what mattered legally and professionally. I did not need to manage every stranger's interpretation forever. You can use the public record, I said, but your emotional perspective is unique. It's also mine. The documentary was made without me. I never watched it. Rachel did and sent a review. Too much dramatic ocean footage. You made the right choice. I laughed. Once, Vanessa turned her version of events into content because content paid. Would not turn my survival into the same product simply because the offer came with nicer paperwork. Chapter 38, what I did with the settlement. The money from Eric's defamation settlement was not life-changing. That made it easier to decide what to do with it. I paid Simone's remaining fees. I replaced part of my mother's security system cost even after she complained. Then I funded a small annual grant through a local water safety nonprofit for workplace and community groups seeking professional rescue training. I did not name it after Vanessa. I did not name it after myself. The grant paid for instructors, flotation equipment, and basic rescue awareness courses. The first report showed that a construction company used the funding to train supervisors on water hazards near a canal project. A youth organization purchased reach poles and life rings. A hospitality group added staff training on how to manage guests who ignored marked barriers. That last one made me smile. My mother found out because the nonprofit sent a thank you letter to my house while she was watering my plants. You made a donation and didn't tell me. Is that illegal? No, but I like knowing when you're secretly decent. Ruins the brand. She read the letter. This is good. I think so. Does it make you feel better? I considered the question. Not about Vanessa, about yourself. Maybe. I did not need Vanessa's death to become meaningful. That was another trap people fall into after tragedy, the demand to transform loss into purpose so it feels less wasteful. Her death could remain wasteful. The grant was simply something useful I could do with money that came from defending myself. No cosmic balance required. Chapter 39, the last message from Patricia. Patricia contacted me once, years after the accident. Not publicly, not through a lawyer. An email arrived from an address I did not recognize. Jane, I am writing because I have spent a long time being angry at you. I know now that most of that anger came from the fact that you lived and Vanessa did not. I stopped reading for several minutes, then continued. She wrote that therapy had forced her to look at the video again without searching for someone to blame. She wrote that she finally accepted Vanessa crossed the rail herself. She apologized for repeating implications about me and for posting the document that exposed my mother's address. Then she wrote, I still believe if someone strong enough had reached her, she might have lived. I am trying to understand that this does not mean that person owed us their life. That sentence hurt, because it was the closest anyone from Vanessa's family had come to naming the real thing. I did not forgive Patricia because she wrote one good email. Forgiveness was not a coupon redeemed with insight, but I believed she meant it. I answered 3 days later, thank you for acknowledging what happened. I hope you find peace. Please do not contact my mother again. Patricia replied once, I won't. She kept that promise. Sometimes an ending is not reconciliation, sometimes it is simply the last violation not happening. Chapter 40, the report with my name on it. Several years after the retreat, Northstar asked whether I would review an internal case study about the incident. I no longer worked there, but the company wanted an outside perspective before using the material in manager training. The draft was careful. It described voluntary attendance, marine safety, restricted areas, rescue protocols, crisis communication, evidence preservation, and reputational risk. It also contained one sentence that irritated me immediately. An employee with relevant swimming experience was unavailable because she had elected not to attend. I highlighted it. Delete. The author called. Why? It's factually true, so is the fact that I owned a red umbrella. Neither belongs in the risk analysis. Your absence affected the outcome. No, my presence might have affected the outcome. Those are different statements. He went quiet. I continued. If your lesson is that companies should identify which employees are good swimmers so they can become unofficial rescue resources, you've learned exactly the wrong thing. The vessel needed trained rescue systems. Employees needed to follow barriers. Passenger safety cannot depend on whether Jane happens to attend. I see your point, do you? He laughed uneasily. Yes. The sentence disappeared. The final case study focused on what organizations could control, clear rules, physical barriers, qualified response, communication, evidence, that mattered more to me than being mentioned as the woman who might have saved Vanessa. I had spent enough of one life as a hypothetical resource in someone else's emergency. Chapter 41, Margaret Falls. And I do not become the whole system. My mother slipped on a wet grocery store floor the following year. The call came while I was presenting to a client. A store manager said she was conscious, embarrassed, and being evaluated by paramedics because she had landed badly on one wrist. Every old instinct in me activated. Leave now, fix everything, become the plan. I excused myself from the meeting and called the hospital on the way. Then I stopped at a red light and realized I was doing it again, not caring, overowning. There was a difference. Margaret was already with professionals. My aunt was driving to the hospital from closer by. I did not need to speed. I did not need to cancel the entire week. I did not need to become a private emergency department because someone I loved had fallen. I arrived safely. My mother had a fractured wrist and a spectacularly bad mood. They won't let me go home until someone promises to stay with me tonight, she complained. Reasonable, traitor. I arranged a rotation with my aunt and one of Margaret's friends for the next few days. My mother objected. You can stay. I can stay tonight. Aunt Helen is taking tomorrow. Carol has Wednesday. I'm not an office schedule. Correct, office schedules complain less. She glared at me, then smiled. The old Jane would have cancelled everything and slept on her mother's couch for 2 weeks while answering work email from the kitchen. The new Jane stayed when she was needed and left when someone else could safely take over. Love remained, martyrdom did not. That distinction was harder to learn than any data model I ever built. Chapter 42, Nothing Owed to the Ocean. On another island trip, years later, I stood near a marina where a rescue crew was demonstrating life ring throws for tourists. A child missed the target and laughed. His father tried next and nearly hit the instructor. Everyone cheered anyway. I watched from a bench with my mother. You want to try? Margaret asked. No, scared, lazy, much healthier. We sat there until the demonstration ended. A rescue worker explained that drowning people often grab rescuers instinctively and can pull them under. He demonstrated how professionals use flotation devices, distance, and trained approaches. My shoulder remembered Vanessa's nails. For years I had treated that memory as evidence I failed somehow after saving her. I should have been stronger, should have held on longer, should have anticipated the current. Listening to the instructor, I finally heard the simpler truth. I had entered a rescue beyond my role and nearly succeeded anyway. Nearly was not a moral failure. Dying was not proof of goodness. Surviving this time was not proof of selfishness. The ocean owed me nothing, neither did Vanessa, and most importantly, I no longer owed the ocean a second body to prove I had learned compassion. Margaret nudged me. You're doing the face. What face? The one where you're giving yourself a speech. I laughed. Maybe. Is it a good speech? I looked at the water. Finally, Chapter 43, the promotion file. When I eventually left North Star, Rachel gave me a copy of the original strategy director evaluation packet, not because I needed it for another job. My record had long since moved past that promotion, she said. You should see what people actually wrote about you before the accident. I opened it at home. The panel comments were ordinary and unexpectedly moving. Strong technical judgment, excellent client problem solving, needs to delegate more. Sometimes allows account leads to present her work without enough visibility. High potential for strategic leadership. Vanessa's packet was there too because the process had once included both of us. Strong relationship skills, excellent presentation presence, needs deeper ownership of analytical work, at risk of overstating team contributions as personal leadership. I stopped reading. There it was, before the yacht, before anyone died, before the arguments over memorial language. People had already seen the difference between us. I had spent too much of both lives imagining that Vanessa's confidence could erase reality forever. It could distort reality, delay it, package it more attractively. But work leaves traces, so do choices. I called Rachel. Why did you give me this? Because you still act like you won the promotion only after everything happened. I looked at the page. One candidate disappeared. Yes, and you were still the strongest person left before she disappeared. Those can both be true. I sat on the edge of my couch. In my previous life, Vanessa had not only accused me after I died, she had occupied my professional space too. Her version of our rivalry became the only version anyone heard. I had let that shadow follow me even in this life, Rachel continued. You didn't steal anything from her by surviving. My throat tightened. I know, you say that like you're trying to convince me. Maybe I'm practicing. Keep practicing. After the call, I put the evaluation packet in a folder with my old promotion letter, not as proof that I was better than Vanessa. That comparison had taken enough from both of us. I kept it because the file showed something I had once forgotten. My life had value before tragedy made it dramatic. My work had value before anyone died beside it. My future did not begin when Vanessa's ended. It had already been mine. Chapter 44. A simple no. The last lesson arrived in the least dramatic way possible. A former North Star colleague invited me to a weekend sailing trip. Nothing corporate. Nothing dangerous. 6 people. Calm weather. An experienced captain. Dinner at a marina. Afterward, I read the invitation and waited for fear. None came. I also waited for obligation. That was gone too. I simply did not feel like spending my Saturday on a boat, so I wrote, thanks for thinking of me, I'm going to pass. Have a great time. No explanation, no medical excuse, no family emergency, no secret knowledge of disaster, just no. My colleague replied with a thumbs up and asked whether I wanted brunch the following week instead. I stared at the message and laughed. For years, even before the yacht, I had treated refusal like a courtroom argument. If I could not prove why I deserved to say no, I usually said yes. Work late, take the extra client, cover the presentation, attend the retreat, jump into the water. The scale changed, the habit did not. Now I understood that boundaries rarely needed a closing statement. Sometimes a choice belonged to me simply because the life attached to it was mine. I put my phone away and spent Saturday with my mother at a farmer's market. Nothing happened. That was the point. Epilogue. Behind the rail, years later, the sentence that stayed with me was not Vanessa's accusation, it was not Eric's letter, it was not the Marine report, it was a deckhand's voice in a recovered video. Ma'am, step back inside. Such a small instruction, a few words between one life and another. Vanessa heard them. She smiled. One picture, then she crossed the rail. In my previous life, I followed her into the consequence. That was the part one had once mistaken for love, courage, goodness, decency. All the things women are praised for when they destroy themselves quietly enough. I saw someone in danger and decided my body was the nearest available resource. I did not calculate, I did not wait, I jumped. I saved Vanessa, then I died, and because she survived, she had a voice, she used it to say I pushed her. My mother had to defend me while grieving me. My work became someone else's achievement. My death benefit became disputed money. My name became a debate, all because I believed that once another person needed help, my own life became secondary. Rebirth did not make me cruel, it made me precise. When I opened my eyes with the retreat form in front of me, I did not sabotage the yacht, I did not warn Vanessa with impossible knowledge, I did not accuse her before she acted. I tore up a piece of paper, that was all. I chose not to go. Vanessa boarded without me. She still had every ordinary option available to her. She could stay inside the rail, she could listen to the crewman, she could decide the photograph was not worth it, she could catch the first flotation device, she could stop treating safety as something other people invented to limit her. She did none of those things, and this time there was no Jane Carter in the water to exchange one life for another. People later asked whether I regretted canceling. No, I regretted that Vanessa died. Those were not the same statement. I regretted that her child died with her. I regretted that Eric and Patricia turned grief into another attempt at profit and blame. I regretted that Melissa had to learn too late that laughing along with a dangerous choice can still matter, but I did not regret living. That distinction became the foundation of everything that came after. I kept my own project credit, I earned my promotion, I protected my name before strangers could define it, I took my mother to medical appointments and birthday dinners and overpriced island breakfasts, I returned to the water by choice, I learned to float without thinking of death, and one afternoon, on a ferry with my mother, I watched a young woman step toward a marked barrier to take a photograph. A crew member immediately said, "Please stay behind the rail." The woman rolled her eyes, then stepped back. Nothing happened, no tragedy, no hero, no viral story, no lawsuit. The ferry kept moving. I smiled. That was the ending nobody celebrates because it looks like nothing. A warning heard, a boundary respected, a person going home. Once I thought courage meant being the first person into the water. Now I knew better. Sometimes courage is tearing up the form, sometimes it is disappointing people, sometimes it is refusing to turn your life into proof that you are kind, and sometimes it is as simple as staying where you are supposed to be, behind the rail. After hearing the story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.